Hello everyone, it's Scott, and we're back for day 2 of Tarkir Dragonstorm spoilers. And we got a lot of interesting cards to talk about today. But before we do, remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Tarkir Dragonstorm spoiler season and beyond. And if you're looking for cards from the set, you can check us out on the web at caffeinatedgamers.tcgplayerpro.com. So let's dive into today's previews. So our first is Dragonback Assault for 3, a green, a blue, and a red mana. You get an enchantment. And when this enchantment enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, which is a really good way of, in a dragon deck, dealing with kind of all the small creatures that your opponent might be playing at that point. And then it also has a landfall trigger, which I think makes this very standard playable. And whenever a land you control enters the battlefield, you get to create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. And I think that ability, even though it's 6 mana, the amount of times you can trigger this is going to be significant. And we already have some cards that help us get extra mana into play, and we're getting a few more from the set. So I think this is going to be a very playable card in Standard. Next, we've got Magmatic Hellkite for 2 and 2 red mana. You get a dragon that's a force 5 with flying, and whenever this creature enters the battlefield, you get to destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Its controller searches their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped with a stun counter on it, and then shuffle. If a permanent with a stun counter would become untapped, you get to remove 1 from it instead. So I really like the fact that your opponent, you get to get rid of a non-basic land on your opponent's side, like Cavern of Souls or something like that. And by doing that, you not only get rid of it for the future, but you're going to give them basic land that is going to be tapped for the turn it comes into play, and then their next turn as well. So I think that really is helpful in slowing down your opponent. So I think Magmatic Hellkite has a home in a dragon deck in Standard. Next, we've got Winter Night Stories for 2 and a blue mana. You get a sorcery. You get to draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. And it also has Harmonize for 4 and a blue mana. You may cast this card from your graveyard for its harmonized cost. You may tap a creature you control to reduce that cost by X, where X is its power, then exile the spell. So I think this is one of the better draw spells we've seen in a while in blue. It's kind of the ability, you get to draw 3 and then you're probably getting rid of 1 because you're going to have enough hopefully creatures in your deck where you can consistently just discard one of the cards that's a creature. And then later in the game, when you need to refill your hand, you can do this again, hopefully discard another creature along the way. And then you're going to get 2 cards for 3 mana, which is a pretty good rate in Standard. And you get that filtering effect as well. And more importantly, you get to put stuff in the graveyard. And that can be very important in Standard right now because we do have a number of different graveyard strategies currently in Standard. Next, we've got Eshki Dragonclaw for 1, a green, a blue, and a red mana. You legendary creature, that's a human warrior. That's a 4/4 with vigilance, trample, and ward 1. So a lot of good keyword abilities. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast both a creature spell and a non-creature spell this turn, draw a card and put 2 +1/+1 counters on Eshki Dragonclaw. So I really like this card, and I think given the state of Standard right now, I think accomplishing the task of playing both a creature and a non-creature before combat, I think is something that certainly is doable in Standard. So I think Eshki is definitely a playable card, and I think you'll probably get it to be a 6/6, 8/8, maybe even a 10/10 over the course of a couple turns, because you should be able to cast a creature and a non-creature spell on the same turn. Next, we've got Awaken the Honored Dead for a black, a green, and a blue mana. You get a saga. On chapter 1, you get destroy target non-land permanent, and this is kind of the going rate for destroying any non-land permanent is 3 mana. So I think this is pretty good on its face value, and forgetting about chapters 2 and 3. And on chapter 2, you get to mill 3 cards. So if you're playing a graveyard strategy, again, this is a card that'll help with that. And then on chapter 3, you can discard a card, helping with that graveyard strategy. And then when you do, you get to return target creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. So you get the benefit of pulling back out of the graveyard something that you've milled that you actually want to be able to play with. So I really like this card. I think it'll see definite standard play. Next, we've got Bloom Vine Regent for 3 and 2 green mana. You get a dragon with flying, that's a 4/5. And whenever this creature or another dragon you control enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. So I think the creature side of this is a fine magic card, and we already know that one of the spirit dragons is going to want life gain. So I think this card, and that one, are going to, really work well together. And then it also has an omen. It's claim territory for 2 and a green mana. You get a sorcery, and you can search your library for up to 2 basic forest cards, reveal them, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, and then shuffle. So very nice omen ability there, where you're going to be able to get 2 lands for 3 mana, which is a pretty good rate for that. And one of them is going to go immediately onto the battlefield, and then you can play the other one potentially from your hand. So maybe you do this on turn 3, and you can ramp into having a turn 4 where you've got 5 mana in play at that point because of the extra mana that you've been able to acquire from Claim the Territory. Now, also, I like the ability with these omens where you're putting it back into your deck and shuffling it in. And the reason I like that is it allows you to play both sides of the card. So maybe I don't need Bloom Vine Regent in this particular game, but using Claim the Territory multiple times might be very important to me in accomplishing my strategy. So I think the flexibility that the omens allow us is going to be good in standard. Next, we've got Saruk, Elusive Hunter for 2 and a green mana. You get a legendary creature that's a human warrior. He's a 4/3, and this spell can't be countered. He has trample. And whenever creature you control or a creature spell you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you get to draw a card. So if your opponent decides to try to counter one of your creatures, that would draw you a card. If they target it with spot removal, that'll draw you a card. So I think Saruk is a very powerful card in standard because it will replace itself even if your opponent targets it with removal as soon as it gets onto the battlefield. Next, we've got Sibsig Ceremony for 3 black mana. You legendary enchantment, and creature spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield, if you cast it, destroy that creature, then create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. So interesting kind of enchantment where you cast stuff and then it gets destroyed and you get a 2/2 zombie back. So I'm not sure where this actually fits into standard, but any kind of sacrifice deck might want this enchantment. You get your key enchanting pieces down, and then you cast this behind it, and then every creature spell you cast from there on out will trigger the abilities of a Bartolome or any of the other creatures that care about sacrificing things. Next, we've got Severance Priest for a white, a black, and a green mana. You get a Djinn Cleric, that's a 3/3 with Death Touch. And when this creature enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, you exile that card. And when this creature leaves the battlefield, the exile card's owner creates an XX white spirit creature token where X is the mana value of the exile card. So, I mean, nice that it's in these colors, allowing you to go into your opponent's hand and exile something. But it is a 3/3, and it would die to a lot of things in standard. So I'm not sure that this is going to be powerful enough. With the flip side of, I'm paying 3/3. Yes, my opponent's going to have to use removal on it, but and the big thing here is the but is, if I'm exiling a 5 mana card, well, they get a 5/5 in replacement for that card. So I think in the long run, I don't know if this really has what it takes to make it in standard. All right, next we are our rare land cycle from the set. And the first is Dolkoven Enchantment. This land enters tapped unless you control a mountain or a swamp, and it provides white mana. And then for 2 and a white mana, whenever you attack this turn, create 2 1/1 red warrior creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. So I like that static, the ability on this to pay 3 mana, get 2 1/1s that get to attack. And I can see this, as a card certainly in our Convoke deck. You put a couple copies of this in, and you get to that point in the game where you kind of run out of cards in your hand, but you still want to keep attacking, and you need to keep attacking to kind of get that last little bit of damage in. In this, for 3 mana, gets you those 2 creatures that hopefully then can help you win the game. Next, we've got Mistrise Village. Again, this land enters tapped unless you control a mountain or a forest. So this is our kind of teamer land. And for a blue mana, you can tap it, and the next spell you cast this turn can't be countered. So really powerful ability on Mistrise Village, and it might be the most powerful of these, because giving a spell uncounterability is very powerful. And for a single blue mana to do that, that seems very, very reasonable to me. So I expect to see quite a bit of this, not only in standard, but in other formats as well. Next, we've got Kori Mountain Monastery, our red rare lands from the cycle. This land enters tapped unless you control a plane or an island, and it taps for red mana. And for 3 and a red mana, you can tap it and exile the top card of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play that card. So I think this is a situation where you get a card that, where red decks kind of fizzle out in the mid game when they run out of cards. This is a land that provides you some card advantage throughout the course of the game when you need to draw some more cards. So I think this has definitely a place in standard. Next, we have Kishla Village. This land enters tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. Okay, so, and you can tap it for 1 green mana, and then for 3 and a green mana, you can surveil 2. So I think this goes, into any of those graveyard decks that are in black and green. And you're going to be able to surveil, so you can put important cards into your graveyard that you might want there. And I think that's a good enough ability for it to see standard play. Next, we've got Great Arashki City. This land enters tapped unless you control a forest or a plains. So this is our Abzan land from the set. And for 1 and a black mana, you can tap it and exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a 1/1 spirit creature token. And I think that's a very, very good cost for this. So yes, you're getting rid of something from your graveyard, but you're getting that 1/1 for 2 mana, which I think on a land is a pretty good rate to get a 1/1 creature. Next, we've got Runescale Stormbrood. For 3 and a red mana, you get a dragon that's a 2/4 with flying, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell or a dragon spell, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And this is very reminiscent of me. So Slick Shot Show Off has basically the same ability on it. So this has got more toughness, which I think is good. It does cost 2 additional mana, which is bad, but I think in a deck where you're trying to play Slick Shot, this might be a kind of a top end card for you, because you also have an Omen on it, which is Chilling Speech for 1 and a blue mana. You get an instant where you get to counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. So maybe in the early game you use this to counter a spell, and then in the mid to late game, then you're using it to cast as a creature, and getting the advantage of every time you cast that non-creature spell or a dragon spell, you get to give it +2/+0. All right, and that brings us to the final cards I want to talk about today. So we got a cycle of Devotee cards. We got Temur Devotee and they're all 1 or 2 mana. So for 1 and a blue mana, you get Temur Devotee. It's a human druid with Defender. It's a 3/3. And the important thing I think about all of these cards is certainly they're going to be very limited playable, but you can pay a mana and then you can filter that mana. So hey, I need green mana. Well, I can filter green mana once a turn through Temur Devotee. Jeskai Devotee, again, for 1 and a red, it's a 2/2 Orc Monk with Flurry. Whenever you cast your second spell, each turn this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, so making it a 3/3. And you can filter once a turn for a blue, a red, or a white mana. And then we have Mardu Devotee. For a white mana, you get a 1/2 Human Scout, and when this creature enters, you get to scry 2. Nice enter the battlefield trigger on it. And then you can pay 1 and get a red, a white, or a black mana from it. So something in Mardu colors. Abzan Devotee. Okay, it's a dog cleric. It's a 2/1. Okay, again for 1 mana, you can filter it to create a white, a black, or a green mana. And then for 2 and a black mana, you can return this card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's got a recursiveness to it. And then we have Sultai Devotee for 1 and a green. You get a zombie snake druid. That's a 2/1 with Death Touch. And again, for 1 mana, you can filter for a black, a green, or a blue mana once each turn. So I think these are all cards that I think are going to be very powerful in limited, because they're going to be allow you to filter for whatever mana that you need, because you're probably likely to play a 3 mana deck in limited this time around at your pre-release events. So I think these are going to be very important cards in that. But I think there's potentially standard application for them as well, because it doesn't cost anything other than the mana to go ahead and filter for what you need. And all of these are, decent cards on their surface anyways. All right, so those are the cards from day 2 of Tarkir Dragonstorm. A lot of interesting things here. Tell me what you think in the comments, and thanks for staying to the end of the video. And remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Tarkir Dragonstorm preview season and beyond. Thanks. I'll see you next time.